On behalf of Professor Charan Singh, who is our CEO, I welcome you, Professor Parmod Kumar, Professor Bashabi, Gupta, and every participant who's on the online, and maybe some are listening from remote area. Before we start the discussion, let me have the privilege of introducing Professor Parmod Kumar. And though he does not require any kind of introduction, yet it's my duty and singular privilege to introduce you. uh, Professor Parmod Kumar is the director of Giri Institute of Development Study, Lucknow. Previously, he has worked as Professor Agriculture Development and Rural Transformation Center, Institute for Social Economic Change, ISEC, Bangalore. And before joining ISEC, he has worked at the National Council of Applied Economic Research, New Delhi Institute of Economic Growth, and he was also fellow under International Visitors Leadership Program sponsored by US government. He had been visiting scholar to Glasgow University, OECD, FAO Paris, and many other organizations. He was managing editor of the Journal for Socio and Economic Development and was the editorial board of Agriculture Situation in India. And presently, he is an executive member of Indian Council for Agriculture Marketing, which is very, very important. Indian Journal of Agriculture Economics, member editorial board of Indian Journal on Social Justice. He was impaneled as visiting professor in economics for deputation to ICCR chair abroad by the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, that is ICCR. He has been member of various committee of the union and state governments. Currently, he is chairing working group on crop husbandry, agriculture inputs, demand and supply projections constituted by prestigious institution Niti Aayog. He has authored and co-authored more than 12 research volumes. His latest book titled Contact Farming and Land Tendency in India, Prospects and Challenges, published by SAGE. He was published around 17 research articles in referred national and international journals. He has published articles in high impact journals. He was conferred the IDRC Indian Social Science Research Award for the work, and the list is endless. So, and he has obtained postgraduate degree, doctorate as Sir Ratan Tata Fellow and doctorate from JNU, New Delhi. Let me also introduce Professor Bashabi Gupta. I'm sure she was visible a little while ago, but I'm sure she must be listening to us. Bashabi Gupta is professor at the Department of Geography, Miranda Howe, Delhi University. She has extensive work on land reforms and things like that. She was a Felix Scholar and completed her doctoral research at the CSRD, School of Social Science, JNU, at the Center for Study for Development Societies, New Delhi. Her research interests are centered on sustainable community livelihood and resilience, differential and comparative development patterns for Indian and African nation, general and development, social geography, tribal study, northeastern India studies, and climate variability. In fact, she has done very widely. Her work has lot of depth and the width also. She uses GIS and remote sensing tools in her research, along with qualitative and quantitative methods. And so these are the very, very pioneering speakers. So I would request Professor Parmod Kumar to start his presentation. Over to Parmod Kumar ji.
Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Thanks to the chair, Vishandass ji, for this long introduction and all the adjectives he has used. I thank Charan Singh ji for giving me this opportunity. Let me share the can't see the presentation here. Is the one?
Yes, Vivek, can you share the presentation of Professor Parmod Kumar?
My presentation was opened. Why it
Yeah,
is
it
not?
was open. I saw you a little your presentation a little while. Parmod, are you
Yeah,
listening?
yeah.
Sir, please share again.
Yeah, Vivek.
I'm sharing it now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Visible.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sparing your time and coming for this presentation. I'm speaking on gender in agriculture and women empowerment study of West Bengal. This is a project which we have done for Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, and the survey part has been carried out by my co-author Deepanvita Chakrabarti, who is a consultant working at JIDS. This work is funded by ICSSR, so I thank them for uh, providing the funding for this work. So I am not going to talk about the entire work we have done. We have already submitted draft report to ICSR, and we'll be just submitting the final report, and then we'll share it for the larger public. So I will be presenting some parts of this the work. The briefly the presentation, introduction, conceptual framework in a very brief, and then objective database. Among the findings, women participation in agriculture and determining factors, gender-based differentials in agriculture. What is the cropping pattern, productivity, and profitability among our surveyed households? Uh, Intra-household asset distribution and women empowerment, especially the women empowerment where our women stand. And then in the end, I will be presenting briefly conclusion and policy suggestions. So basically, this work is on gender. I have been trying to work in this field. One of my students registered for gender in agriculture, but then she could not carry on because there was not sufficient number of uh, farmers available for survey where a PhD work can be completed. So she just changed her topic, but that urge of working on women agriculture, how the women agriculture is different from men agriculture. This was the essence we wanted to see, and this is a kind of work which we could not do in the PhD, but then it was taken up as a project work, and a part of this is done. Maybe part of other women role in rural sector we are going to have starting another project. So we'll be carrying out this continuing this work. Briefly introducing the issue. Agriculture crop cultivation claims a lion's share in the classification of agriculture and allied activities. It entails series of activities at different stages of production process, and women form an integral part of the rural economy. Uh, some of the reviewed studies, we have gone through all the literature, and these reviewed studies suggest that all farming operations except plowing are deeply intertwined with the perceptible contribution of women. There are some citation given there. The key activities include like where women play a very big role are the crop selection, seed selection, land preparation, planting, weeding, pest control, harvesting, and processing. These are the activities in agriculture where women participate either as farmers or family laborers, labor come farmers, or purely wage workers. Given this scenario, it can be affirmed that as the nation is gearing up to achieve sustainable development goals, including SDG 2, which aims to end hunger and malnutrition by 2030, women can be the key agents of change in agriculture, nutrition, and rural development. Women constitute two-fifths of the country's agriculture workforce, with three-fourths of all working women finding sustenance in farm sector. Yet, to the agony, the problem lies in the fact that a good portion of women engaged in this sector are struggling getting their activities in food production visible. They are working in agriculture, but the productive activity is hardly visible. Despite Census of India and NSSO diligently involved in collecting gender disaggregated data across economic activities. Why I'm saying their production activity is not visible, because in agriculture, really, who takes the decision? Even if the women is the farmer, uh, does the decision making related to agricultural activities like cropping pattern, how much fertilizer is to be used, which machinery is to be bought, where the product will be sold? Are our women really taking these decisions? This is the very crucial question which we want an answer to. And most of the studies do not speak about this. So this study, we are trying to attempt this particular issue. In India, female-centered studies took foundation in 1970s. The past 3 decades have witnessed path-breaking research on various aspects of women and their performance in different sectors. In the field of agriculture, changing gender equation in face of agrarian transformation emerges to be a considerably vital topic of empirical inquiry, as it is not only a known aspect that women are the backbone of the rural economy, but they have been globally acknowledged to be the key agents of change in agriculture, nutrition, and food security. Given that their involvement in food production has intensified following more men out migration, however, the last 3 decades in India saw agriculture becoming more feminized before what it was before, especially before liberalization. The feminization of agriculture progressively took shape with escalation of intersectoral male-oriented shift from farm to non-farm activity, which gave the women crucial scope to come out of the shadow of their man and make themselves count in agriculture workforce, manifested by increase in their relative share. Uh, Hardly there was women involved in cultivation activities, in true cultivation activities before the liberalization process, but after liberalization, as the service sector and manufacturing sector has grown at a rapid pace compared to agriculture, so remuneration in the service sector has increased multiple times compared to agriculture. So this has motivated the male member of the farming family to move to the city and work in non-farm activities to have better remuneration, and women is left behind to take care of agriculture. So this is all about feminization, which is happening in the post 2000 phenomenon. Now this picture, this graph shows the conceptual framework of how liberalization policies initiated the era of feminization of agriculture. Neoliberal policies gave rise to open this with the open global market, competition in free market economy, and its associated negative repressions on agriculture. Agriculture profitability went down compared to manufacturing and service sector. So less profit in agriculture led to decline in agriculture employment. There is widespread farmer suicide phenomena in the early 2000s, which all this led to mass exodus of male agriculture workers to urban areas in search of alternative livelihood, though leading to feminization of agriculture and mainstreaming of women's role in farm sector. So women was left behind to work as farmers as well as agriculture wage laborers. So this defines how women is finding a new role in agriculture. Now, the main objective of my study: in India, women constitute two-fifths of the country's agriculture workforce, with three-fourths of all working women finding sustenance in farm sector. The key role of women in agriculture varies from performing as farmers with legal land right, DGO, female farmers, I just define what is this DGO and de facto, to working as family farm operators, labor in spouse's land in his physical absence, de facto, and to operating purely as agriculture laborer in own farm or in farm-based market. The major objective of this paper is to analyze important changes with regard to gender participation in agriculture, gender-specific contribution to food production, gender role in decision making at farm and household level, and the resultant effect on women empowerment. Specifically, the paper is perceived with the following objectives: to understand the principal factors determining the level of women participation in agriculture, gender-specific contribution to agriculture production process across the key crops in the study area and gender-based differentials, to assess the variation in area production, yield, cropping pattern, and farming practices across different categories of female farm operators, female farmers by right, DGO female farmers. The female farmers have been divided into two parts. Although females are working in agriculture, but they hardly own agriculture. They hardly, the land hardly is on their name, and they are not the real decision maker. So in search of female cultivators who really own the farm, or at least they are going to get the ownership on their name, and they are the decision makers, we call them as DGO. And these are the DGO female farmers, generally the widows whose husband have died, and because of absence of any other male member in the family, they have been forced to become farmer with the ownership of the land and taking all the decisions related to agriculture. There is a other set of female cultivators whose husbands are alive, but they are basically they are migrated to urban areas for better option of earning, and they are taking care of land, but they are not the real decision makers. They take decision, but after discussing with their husband, whenever he comes back, he visits the home, or many a time they discuss the crucial issues over phone with the husband. So the entire decision is not theirs, and they are not the owner of the agriculture, but they are generally running the agriculture. They are called the de facto female farmers. They are actually farmers, de facto farmers, but they are not having the ownership, and they are not wholesomely in charge of agriculture. So they are categorized as de facto farmers. And then we have the third category of control group, male farmers. We have compared these female farmers as DGO, female farmers as de facto, with that of the men who are working in agriculture. So the primary survey data has been relied for this study. To carry out the proposed study in the setting of West Bengal, multi-state sampling was done and data was collected using semi-structured questionnaire schedule. We have done this in West Bengal, the feminization of agriculture is much more compared to any other state. And we could see the number of women farmers much higher in some of the districts, among which the Coach Bihar was the highest. So we have selected Coach Bihar district for this study. So it was purposely selected for its highest share of rural female work participation to rural workforce in agriculture. One block, namely Sital Kochi, and two villages, namely Chota Kalismari and Bear Thana. For these two villages were selected, one for cultivators and the other one for agricultural laborers, because the Kalismari did not have sufficient number of laborers. So we selected for agriculture, and the non-agricultural laborers, we selected another adjoining village, Bear Thana, for collecting the sample. To start with, working population households were divided into three groups: DGO, de facto, and male farmers as control group. 70 DGO female farmers. This was the number available in the village. This all the number we had picked up. 56 de facto female farmers. Again, the number available we took it, and 83 male farmer households were selected, making the sample of 209 cultivator households. In addition, 100 labor households, some of them working in agriculture, others non-agricultural activities, were picked to have a comparison of laborers with the cultivators. Now, if we just a snapshot of the Cooch Behar districts, the agricultural activities in this district, because this is Tarai district, this is a valley adjoined by the hills. So paddy is the main crop grown there. There are 3 seasons of paddy: autumn, summer, and winter. All the 3 seasons of paddy is grown there, and Cooch Behar has almost 5 to 6% share of the total district in growing paddy. So this district was chosen. If we see the productivity yield, the highest yield is in summer, Rabi season, followed by winter season, and then autumn 2.13. And the our Cooch Behar we found has compares very well with the state yield rate. This is the socio-economic characteristics of the sample. Sir, how much time I can continue till 4:50?
Yes, maybe total. Okay, about 40 minutes total.
Oh, okay. So, looking at the socio-economic characteristics, our sample had 56% SC, 27% OBC, and 17% Muslims. There was no general farmer category in the village. So this was the socio-economic features of the sample. Among total 33% de female farmers, 27% de facto female farmers, and 40% male farmers, control group. This was the total selection. If we see average farmland holdings, average size was 1.25 hectares, which is basically marginal between the marginal and small holdings. Most of the holdings were marginal or small. The lowest holding size was among the de jure farmers, who are the widows and the poorest one, and highest was among the control group, 1.65 hectares. Total family members was 4.26, where again the family size was lowest among the de jure, and they did not have any male member in their family. So totally, the economy was dependent on the women who was working as a farmer. Number of children was highest among these widow households. So the economic burden was maximum on them. If we see the total number of working members was lowest, but number of children was highest. So the dependency ratio, which is basically working divided by non-working members, was very high among widows, 2.32 compared to 0.65 among male members. So this is the kind of economy you can just guess which these farmers belong to. Now this is the agricultural laborers, again 43% SC, 37% OBC, 14% general. In the labor category, we had 14% general and 6% Muslim population. And female agricultural laborers constituted 50% share. Female non-agricultural laborers who were basically
उसके
working
सेल
as
मंगवाने थे,
nurse.
फिर मैं किसी से मंगवा लिया, ये नहीं चल रहा था, अभी मंगवा लिया. हाँ.
Can you please
अभी
keep?
चल रहा, मैं फिर कर लेते.
Yeah. So female non-agricultural laborers was 12%, and male agricultural laborer, again, we had the control group 38% with 62% of agriculture and non-agricultural laborers. If we see the economic situation here, dependency ratio was fairly equal among these laborers. There was no particular bias to any particular category, and total working number was also almost similar. Unlike DGO, which is a much poorer group, among the laborers, they were on equal footing. Now, women participation in agriculture and what are the determining factors? We try to rank uh, based on Henry Garrett. This formula is given. Rank assigned to the different contributory factors highlighted by respondents across three categories of women farm workforce that emerged to be potent reasons for rise in participation of women in agriculture during COVID as well as post-pandemic. We have taken the sample before COVID and after COVID. So I'll be just showing the results related to that. If we see what are the factors for these women to join as agriculture farmer or agriculture laborers, among the DGO, rising household indebtedness was the number one rank. Insufficient non-farm employment was these were the two major reasons for DGO female farmers who were forced to work as female farmers because their husband has died and they had to take charge of the agriculture. Among de facto female farmers, the farmers whose husband have migrated. So the main reason was rising dependency ratio as number one, rising household indebtedness, and number two, halt in remittance receipt from migrated household husband owing to job loss during pandemic was the third reason. Insufficient non-farm employment was the fourth reason. Among laborers, female farm laborers, rising indebtedness, halt in remittance receipts, and insufficient non-farm employment were the main reasons for working in the agriculture sector. Now, this is we have run the logistic regression to find out the variables in their basic order. We can see for DGO female farmers participation as farmer in agriculture, what were the factors, determining factors? Age, with the increasing age, they did not have option to work as non-farm, non-agriculture labor or going to urban areas to work because they had the children and also the age was not supporting. Probably education and other reasons were also there to work as agricultural cultivators. Dependency ratio was another factor where I've shown they had the high dependency ratio. Then the farm size, if the bigger farm size compel them to work as agriculture within agriculture. If the holding size is small, probably they have to look for other than agriculture options. Family indebtedness also forced them to work in agriculture and number of years of experience of working as family labor because they had earlier family labor work experience. So they took course of working in agriculture. There are two factors. Education has negative coefficient. Similarly, non-farm employment availability had negative coefficient. That means if the women is more educated, they will go for other than agriculture activities. If they have non-farm employment opportunities available, they will go for that. These are the basic factors which determine their participation in agriculture. Among de facto female farmers, again, age with a negative sign, indicating that those women who are young after marriage, husband has gone to work in the city, so they have tendency of working in agriculture as a cultivator. Then years of migration of the husband, more years of migration force them to take course of agriculture. The higher size of holdings also compel them to work within agriculture. It is more profitable if the holding size is higher. And then the number of years of prior experience working as family labor also helps them to come into agriculture. In the case of agricultural labor, all these factors, age, dependency, education, less education, family indebtedness, and non-farm rural unskilled employment, non-availability of unskilled employment, all these force them to work as agricultural labor. Now, female agriculture laborers and gender-based differentials. We try to see how much is the man days generated pre-pandemic compared to post-pandemic 2019-20 and 2020 through within agriculture, and then what has been the change from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, and what was the wage rate, and how much is the share of male and female in agriculture. So if we briefly, these are all the activities: land preparation, sowing, nursery, raising, transplanting, plant treatment, harvesting. These are the activities in agriculture. Total man days generated in the Kharif paddy was 58 man days in the season, and Rabi paddy was 62 man days. This is pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic was 56 and 63, slightly different, not much different. If we see the proportion of work by within male and female, 55% work was done by female, 45 was done by male. So female were participating more compared to male in the workforce related to these activities, like transplanting. 100% work was done by female. Sowing and nursery raising, 93% of work was done by female. Similarly, in Rabi season, 53% by female and 47% by male. Before pandemic, if we see post-pandemic, 54 and 46 female and male, and 44 and 56 in the Rabi season. So it is true that agriculture contribution of female is even more than the men. And in most of the activities, except harvesting, where their contribution is less, in most of the other activities, their contribution is much more compared to male. Looking at the wage rate, before pandemic, wage rate was 190 rupees per person for female and 240 for male. Although they are doing more work, but they are paid less than male. 190 compared to 240. This is pre-pandemic. And post-pandemic, there was slight increase, 190 to 200 for female, and 240 to 250 for male. So this discrimination continues even post-pandemic. The difference between male and female wage rate stands there. If we see the difference between pre and post-pandemic, man days invested, it was slightly less, 8% for female. The work participation or total man days work declined for female, whereas it increased for male, 21%. In the case of female, it declined by 14%. This is because during pandemic, male who were working as migrated labor in the cities, they have come back, and many of them they stayed back in the village. So their share of women declined, whereas share of men increased post-pandemic. Aggregate, it was declining for 4.5% male plus female, whereas in the Rabi, it increased by 2%. So this is the situation pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, and also the wage rate male versus female in paddy cultivation in the studied region. Now, if we see the participation of female, and decision making by the female, gender-wise decision making at different stages of the crop production. In DG or female farmer households, all the decisions were taken by female. This related to land preparation, seed nursery, transplanting, irrigation, weeding, farmyard manure, organic biofertilizer, plant protection, weedicide, harvesting and threshing, bagging and transportation, marketing. All decisions were taken by female in the case of DGO. In the case of de facto, female farmers had very few decisions at their discretion. Seed nursery, transplantation, weeding, and farmyard manure. These decisions were taken by female, while most of the other decisions were either by male or the joint decision making. In the case of male farmers, control group, female had hardly any role. They were although they were all working, but they were working as agriculture laborers. As a cultivator, they did not have any decision except weeding. All other decisions were taken by male, and joint decision also was very, very, very minimal. In the case of de facto, male was sitting in the other place, but that in the decision making they were playing a big role either through when they come to the house or through telephone. They were just advising wife how to all these decisions relating to marketing, where to market, bagging, transportation, harvesting, plant protection, irrigation, cropping pattern, and all that. The decision was ultimately taken generally by male uh, or by discussion of male and female both. So this is the picture of the entire village, all the selected 209 households clubbing together. They were growing mainly three crops: kharif paddy, rabi paddy, and potato. Potato was grown by few, mostly by the male farmers, not by female farmers. Dijo was not growing potato; they were growing only kharif paddy and rabi paddy. De facto, some farmers and mostly male control group, they were growing potato. So output per hectare, 25 quintals for kharif paddy, 27 quintals for rabi paddy, and 105 quintals potato. This was the productivity in the village. Price, you can see the kharif paddy was 1230, rabi paddy was 1260, and potato was 950 rupees per quintal. So gross earning was much higher in potato, but expenditure was also equally high. So if we see the net profit, 3,000 from kharif paddy, 3,800 for rabi paddy, and 4,600 for potato. This was the profitability for the aggregate. Now I'll just come down to de jure, de facto, and male farmers. And because potato were not grown by all, so main analysis is only for paddy, kharif as well as rabi. If we see productivity of kharif, you can see the red one is this yellow one is kharif, and the green one is rabi. The productivity of de jure farmers was 21 quintal compared to de facto 25 quintal and male farmers 29 quintal. So there was a clear difference. Similarly, in the case of rabi paddy, for de jure it was 24 quintal compared to 27 quintal and 29 quintal for the male farmers. So in the same ratio, if not only the productivity was higher for male, the price obtained by male farmer was slightly higher, 1,300 compared to this de jure and de facto group. So gross earning accordingly was higher for control group. Similarly, expenditure was also higher for control group. So I'll just show the net profitability. Net profitability was 2,709, 2,800 for de farmers compared to 3,500 for de facto, or 4,256 for male farmers. So it again was in the ascending order of de jure to de facto and control group. Similarly, in the case of rabi crop, 2,900, 3,400, and 5,700. So in the unique pattern, you can see not only in productivity, but also gross earning and net profit. Now, cost breakup, if we see mainly there were labor cost, two items, labor cost and variable capital cost. Variable capital cost is basically fertilizer, pesticides, insecticides, and related charges, which constituted almost 50% of the cost. Labor constituted around 56 to 40% cost. So rest of the cost was around 10%. This is the variable cost, and fixed cost, which includes revenue, rent paid for leased in land, interest on fixed capital. Fixed capital was almost 88%, 65, and 48 in all these three cases. So the cost component was more on fixed capital, variable capital, which is fertilizer cost, and labor cost. These were the main items in all the de jure, de facto, as well as male farmers. Same is the case with rabi paddy as the kharif paddy. 40% cost of labor, 47% by fertilizer and related cost, and interest on fixed capital almost 90% in the case of DGO. It was much higher here, fixed interest on fixed capital, because DGO farmers were more dependent on informal credit sources compared to the other two groups who could get formal credit. Their cost was much higher, fixed cost was much higher for this reason. Now, if we, this is the yield gap and profitability gap, as I have already presented. De jure and de facto farmers, we have used the t-test to see whether the difference is significant. The difference in yield, de jure and de facto 14%, de jure and male farmers 25%. So there was significant difference. But de facto and male farmers' productivity was non-significant. So it was not much for the de facto female, was not much different from male. In the case of profitability, again, de jure and de facto 21%, de jure female and male farmer 34%, de facto female and male farmer again 17%. So de jure was much lower compared to male farmers. Even de jure was less than the de facto in most of the cases. Same was the case with the Rabi. In the case of Rabi also, de jure female and male farmer 49%, almost half. De facto female and male farmer was also 40% difference. So there was huge difference of yield as well as profitability among male and female farmer. Now, I have used exogenous switching treatment effect regression to just to measure the gender difference in productivity. To estimate the effect of gender on paddy productivity in an exogenous switching treatment effect regression model in a counterfactual framework for measuring production efficiency was employed. Since Cobb-Douglas production function equation with gender as dummy usually do not allow direct examining the role of gender in paddy productivity for both male-headed households and female-headed households, this issue has been addressed by computing the counterfactual mean productivity of each category of farmer household across gender, so as to estimate how much the paddy yield female-headed households would have experienced if the returns on their inputs had been the same as that of the male-headed household characteristics and vice versa. This is what this function does. Following the econometric procedure of Carter and Millen, Casse et al. And Gabre et al. 2021, the actual and counterfactual expected paddy productivity of each category of the household is estimated as below. Equation A and B represent the average paddy productivity for male-headed household and female-headed households. This is A, male with respect to male, and B is female with respect to female. So the figure here D and the figure here C, they are the counterfactuals. Basically what it says, female-headed household may, their basic spending is not at par with the male. So counterfactual is working there. If we can remove the counterfactual, then how much will be the contribution of female-headed household? So equation C and D are their respective counterfactuals for expected average productivity. The use of the above conditional expectations combined with the consideration of gender as a treatment variable eventually facilitates in gauging the effect of gender on paddy productivity. Now, if we see the factors affecting paddy productivity by gender, what are the factors? First, I have taken Kharif and Rabi paddy. The Cobb-Douglas production function, which is basically measures the output, which is what are the factors which determine this productivity or output. And then counterfactual is presented in the last table. So if we see the impact of different inputs on the output, land area planted has a significant effect in the male-headed household and de facto, but in de jure, the coefficient is not significant. Similarly, fertilizer coefficient is not significant in de facto and de jure. and labor is not significant in DGOR. Similarly, age of head of the household is not significant here. With it is significant with negative sign in other equation, other male and de facto farmers. Last but not the least, access to credit is found not significant in all the three, male, de facto, and de jure, but it is significant in the pooled sample of all the household together. The most important factor here is gender, which is dummy with value 0 for female and 1 for male. It is significant, highly significant with 0.07, the dummy value, the coefficient value, which says the male productivity is 7% higher compared to female when we put together the entire sample. This is for Kharif. Similarly, for Rabi also, we have some of the variables which are not significant for the female, whereas they are significant for the male-headed households. Again, here, gender of the household is found significant with the coefficient of 0.1, indicating 10% difference of Rabi paddy between male and female. So females have less 10% less productivity in Rabi and 7% less productivity in Kharif compared to male. Now, this is the formula used for value of marginal productivity. If we have these the slope estimated from these coefficients multiplied by the price, we get the value of marginal productivity, and value of marginal productivity is compared with the price of the factor, and the ratio is presented here. This means if the ratio is less than 1, then value of marginal productivity is not recovered. The factor price is higher than the value of marginal productivity. If ratio is more than 1, then value of marginal productivity is more than the factor price. So the efficiency is indicated by the value of the coefficient 1. If coefficient is less than 1, then that variable is inefficient. If it is more than 1, then it is efficient, and higher the value, higher is the efficiency. We can see in the case of all female households, here de facto and de jure, the farmland land is not appropriately utilized by female compared to male. Male-headed household, the efficiency is 1.04, whereas it is 0.66. That means the productivity, value of productivity is less than the factor cost in the case of de facto as well as de jure female farmers. Similarly, in the case of farmland, in Rabi paddy, again, this is less than 1 in the case of farmland, and fertilizer is less than 1 in the case of Rabi paddy. So some of these factors are not appropriately utilized by female compared to male. In the case of male, you can see all the factors have the efficiency above 1. So there is requirement of providing training to these female households for improving their productivity, or they need access to formal credit and formal machinery, small machinery, so that they can utilize their inputs in a better way. Now, this is the treatment effect of gender coefficient. The difference here, I'll skip this because there is time lag. But as I have shown there, this is A and B. These are all the male productivity because of by the male, and female productivity by the female, 3.36 and 3.46. These are the counterfactual. The heterogeneity effect is 0.07 in the case of Kharif paddy, and 0.10 in the case of Rabi paddy. That means 7% and 10%. As also we have got this factor through dummy, that if female can be given proper training and they are made available, the resources as are available with the male household, their productivity can be increased by 7% and 10%. So in general, it is a widely presumed fact that a large ratio of female headed household would have derived higher farm productivity if they had the equal access to resources as male headed households. However, the difference between male headed and female headed could still not have got eliminated even if the observed differences were taken account of. That is, unobserved factors would still have caused the female farmers to have lower farm productivity than the men. Table in last page shows the actual and counterfactual differences in paddy productivity as I have shown. In table, cell A represents the actual paddy yield and D represents the counterfactual paddy productivity condition for female headed household and likewise for male. The difference between cell A and B in the table shows that an observed paddy productivity gap between male headed and female headed, which is 19%, which we have seen previously with the T test, 19% in case of Kharif and 13.5% for Rabi. This productivity gap would have been reduced by 7 to 10%, 7 in Kharif and 10% in Rabi, if the female-headed household had received the same level of returns on their inputs as male-headed household, given by the difference between cell A and D in table for Kharif as well as Rabi paddy, thus nearly closing the existing gender productivity gap. These results indicate a marginalization of female-headed households, which should be addressed by targeting this category of households for government aids, subsidized loans, and financial assistance, and so on. The last part, I'll just take another 3-4 minutes. Women in agriculture, intra-household asset distribution, and women empowerment. This is, we have compared the assets, value of assets owned by female is given in blue compared to male, which is shown in this red. This is the total assets out of 1,78,000 assets by male farmer households. 1,36,000 belong to male and 41,797 belong to female. In the case of de facto, 69,752 belong to male and 47,553 belongs to female. Whereas in de jure, the entire 72,000 is of the female. This is the difference in asset holding. We have framed the index of women empowerment in agriculture, which is basically the 5 factors we have taken into account: decision about agriculture production, access to and decision-making power over productive resources, control over use of income, leadership in the community, and time. So these 5 factors as presented here gives us the women empowerment index. If we see in the case of de jure, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, we have calculated for 2019 and 22. De jure, the women index is 0.85, which is a combination of all these factors. It is 0.62 in the case of de facto, and only 0.37 in the case of male farmers. This is basically the role of female among the male farmers in the control group. So their situation is the worst. Then the de facto is slightly better than the control group, but they are far worse than the de jure, because they, although their economic condition is better, but their empowerment is much less, because the control of the resources is in the hands of male, not in the hands of female. And there is a decline in their power in their index from 0.62 to 0.45 after the pandemic, because during the pandemic, before pandemic, husband was in urban areas, so they were having more control on resources. After pandemic, husband has returned back to the village, and there significant decline in their power on the resources compared to de jure, where hardly there is any difference. Similarly, the difference decline is not as much in the case of control group also. These are the domain indicators for economic credit access, women deciding the resource utilization, repayment decision, women owned house assets individually. These were the basic factors which go in the economic domain. In the human and resources domain, completion of secondary or higher education, awareness about media and current affairs, exposure to knowledge about family planning. These are all human and social resources. household health and reproductive decision making, women deciding upon family planning, women suffering from anemia. These women not suffering from anemia. These are the two factors which contributes to household health and reproductive and attitude towards socio-cultural norms, women protesting against domestic violence and alcoholism, autonomy to purchase and sale of household resources, membership of SHG, NGO, local political party, freedom of mobility without permission. So these are the factors which are have been taken care while preparing the women index. In the conclusion, in women-headed landed household of the study area, accentuation of the dependency ratio upon death of the husband deepens the financial crisis. The rise in indebtedness plays an important role in contributing to participation of the widow within the age group of 25 to 45 years as farmer in the agriculture sector. In the case of de facto, the key formative factor in instigating their participation in farm supervision emerges to be long-term migration of their husband in pursuit of farm higher income opportunities in the peri-urban space. Attempting to measure gender disparities in paddy productivity with context to both Kharif and Rabi, the study found that on average, the female-headed household paddy of farmland were 14 and 19% less productive than the farmland of their male counterpart for Kharif and Rabi. If the female-headed household had received the same level of returns to their productive resources as male-headed household, this yield gap would have been reduced by 7 to 10%, thus nearly closing the existing gender productivity gap. These results indicate the marginalization of female-headed household and calls for government aid, subsidy, loan, financial assistance. Women's empowerment in agriculture index was constructed to estimate the empowerment of the women as farm operators to identify their opportunities, obstacles, and constraints. On the 5 domain score, these your female farmers were leading in terms of empowerment all through relative to other categories of females in the farm family, both during pre and post pandemic. This was particularly by virtue of death of their husband, as a result of which they came to be the owner of household property and subsequently emerged to be the controller of the family resources. These your female farmers were followed by de facto female farmers. They lagged behind the de jure because they enjoyed autonomy only partially in production-related decision on farming as their supervisory activity were tended to be guided by their distant husband in most of the decision making, which even declined in the post-pandemic. Conversely, worst was the situation of women in the control group of male farmers household who would be always treated as family labor with minimal freedom to exercise right over landed assets and inputs. Some of the policy suggestions: gender-oriented extension services should be provided to women. The land plots which after the husband death, the conversion takes a long time, and that again affects women in the transition period. So this the titling change should have happened easily, and the government needs to provide help in this regard. Strengthening the social protection program of MG Narega, where, if possible, women should be given preference for work in agriculture. The work of MG Narega should be preferred for women agriculture, which can provide them cheaper labor for just for providing them level playing field with the male agriculture. Strengthening government support through procurement of farm output at MSP rate to the women because their price was found much less compared to male. Widening SHG coverage in rural followed by strengthening of SHG bank linkages would help. And for agricultural labor, I think there is much more Narega can do for women agriculture wage earners who are at the above the bottom in the women empowerment index. This is a last graph which shows if they have access to credit, formal crop loan, their productivity and access to the institutional credit has direct relationship. So women should be provided with the institutional credit, which is much cheaper, which would result in their better productivity. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the patience, for listening. I would be very happy to take the questions. Ashok ji.
Now let me move over to, we have a discussant for the program today, and I would request Professor Bashabi Gupta to please share her thoughts.
Good evening, everyone. Professor Kumar, thank you so much for that broad and erudite representation of the project that you are completing in the process of completion. Your report is almost done, and it is a very interesting and an excellent piece of work which is dealing with women empowerment of specific
Saka,
women farmers. Am I audible?
I can hear you.
Professor Bashmi, would you like to be a little closer to the mic? Your voice is a little mild.
Am I audible now, sir?
This is a little better.
Okay. So I will switch off my video because I think we are experiencing a little bit fall in the pressure here. So I,
Sure.
I thank Professor Kumar for an extremely erudite conversation that he has begun with women's empowerment in agriculture. India is still dominated by agriculture as an economic activity, especially in the rural areas. So agriculture is of predominant importance. What Professor Kumar has and the selection of the region Kuch Bihar is also very interesting, coming as a fact that Kuch Bihar was a princely state which acceded to the Indian Union in 1949 and became a part of West Bengal only in 1950. 19th January is when Kuch Bihar is one of the districts of West Bengal. Why I mention this is because West Bengal has a rich history of land reforms, land ownership, and different kinds of land movements right from the time of colonial eras. One of the best recorded histories, land histories in the country is of that of Bengal. So, how do we look at what Professor Kumar is talking of in terms of empowerment? If we look at the land history of Bengal, in which the entire Suba of Bengal, which included in Assam, Bengal, and Bihar, and parts of Orissa also, and 1757 when Robert Clive won the Battle of Plassey and took over the diwaniship of uh, the Bengal Suba, a princely state coexists with the government or the East India Rule Company estates and the areas. Now, the condition of the first land law which comes from there is the Permanent Settlement Act of 1793, which actually created permanent zamindars. Before that, even in Bengal, under the Mughal Subhas, or even in the earlier literature that we find on land history in Bengal, land was not a commodity that could be sold off. There was very little land market per se. So the construction of the land market and how people inherit those lands, especially women, is something which comes to us from 1793 onwards. Whether we see land policy and however we might look at the reforms and especially bringing of female labor and female aided households, I am very interested into Professor Kumar's de jure and de facto landowners because I agree that women agriculturists are a focal point now, and they need to be the focus because it is they who do the backbreaking work in agriculture. Simultaneously, I would say that research on property ownership, and actually what we are talking of is people who are, your status are constructed on the basis of women who own the property or who are in the process of owning the property and women who do not own the property. In this, one thing I would like to say is that property ownership in India comes to us from, especially for women, comes to us from the 1956 amendment to the Hindu Joint Family Succession Act, which was moved and approved by the government of India, and which gave the rights to the Basti Zameen. That means the household, the heath, was given the right to, women were given the right to inherit the property of only the land where the house was built. It is only in 2006 that we see the court case which Meena Agarwal had filed way back in the 90s coming to a completion and fruitful exercise in which they were finally given the rights to Kheti Zameen. So the difference, what I would like to say here also is the difference between agriculture of a large scale or agriculture, women as agriculturists and the process of inheriting the land. You are talking only, sir, of widows, not of independent women, girls or daughters of the family who have also inherited land. So the partition of land and how the households that you have captured is very interesting and should be brought into the study somewhere. Also, the religious divide, because in India, property rights are derived from personal laws. In the Hindu system, you also have Muslim participants in your study, which is interesting because Kuch Bihar is, of course, a mixed society, and rural Bengal is definitely a mixed society. In the Hindu system, women inherit land in two ways. First is Jivutpahan's Dayabhag system or Vigneshwara's Mitakshara system. There is a definite caste bias in between Mitakshar and Vigneshwara and the Dayabhag system. So these little bits are actually coming into the effect as user rights of women in different households. Negotiations of ownership, negotiations of decision are also based somewhere on that particular bias. We also see that West Bengal has had a huge, big land history in the sense that we had the Operation Barga in 77. Before that, it was the Tebhaga Andolan and the Communist Party of India, which through Hare Krishna Konar and Binoy Chaudhary were India's first land law people who brought in land reforms. Land reforms were of six categories or six stable ideas. Abolition of intermediaries, which was done through the abolition of the Zamindari Act way back in 1950. Then the Tenancy Regulation Act, which was a major focus of Operation Borga and the Tebhaga Andolan also. A ceiling on land holdings. In West Bengal, it is 24.7 acres, which is the ceiling level. So Kuch Bihar would also be having that ceiling. The attempts to consolidate disparate landholdings, fractionalization of landholdings amongst different family members, and the inheritance also is a part of this immense understanding. Encouragement of cooperative joint farming and settlement and regulation of tenancy are the basics on which all this was found. The understanding, sir, is that productivity you have calculated, but the productivity you have calculated on the basis of men's and women's different kind of participation. It is basically time time gaps that you have taken into data. That is the only one of the ways which could have been caught, and it is a very important way. What is also missing in this, what I would have liked to see is what is the quality of land when we calculate the productivity. The all land does not have the same amount of revenue that it has to be paid. So the productivity of land is intricately linked to the revenue system. There are different categories of land revenues related to the productivity. So what is the land that women hold? And what is the land that women do not hold? What is the level of productivity participation in those areas? As relates to the revenue aspect is very important, sir. I would like to, at least I thought it would come out a lot more. The next thing that I would like to understand here is through all these land regulations and land history that I spoke of just now, we have the concept of estate. Kuch Bihar in that way was an estate regulated for almost 250 years since they trace the Kuch Bihar royal family, which traces their entire history from the 16th or the 17th century. It's also interesting that the two villages that you have selected for your field survey, they are located only in the valley areas. There is no community forest, there is no community land intervening into these land parcels that the women hold. What is the level of productivity, therefore, would also be decided on what was actually there in the land recordings. Process of land ownership, of transfer of ownership of land is also something very significant and takes a lot of time, especially in terms in for females who would like to inherit and who have filed for the affidavits and all that. It's a huge thing. So those social realities which actually emerge into the social spaces where the decision making is going on is somewhere. I think you have the data. I think you need to bring it out because your questions must have been framed based on these aspects. The last part of what I would bring here is a little bit on the methodology and the selection of the sample households that you have, sir. Your methodology is excellent. It talks of liberalization and how, but it does not talk of how the MSA, that is the minimum support prices that is there, and the approaches which are there. What is the level of those interactions with the women who actually hold the land, with women who actually do not hold the land but work on the land, and one thing I would like to suggest, sir, is please the use of the word control group for the uh, male farmers. I think the word should be benchmark, not as a control group, because in experiments, when we set up experiments, the use of the word control group has a different connotation. That is one suggestion I would like to make. Your selection of instruments is perfectly clear. The logistic regression of how and why the rate of change is occurring, where do are we looking at it? That is interesting and it brings out very interesting results also. But the connection to the social sphere, economics is not separated from the social sphere. And how that power dynamics is played out is needs to be brought out a little bit more. What I would like to suggest here also is there are several capacity building measures which governments have initiated over time for women cultivators. One very important aspect that I would like to note here is that women are not categorized as cultivators. They are not categorized as farmers as such. We might say women headed households when we pick up data from, say, the larger data sets, the mm, what is the recent most data set? Sorry, the NSS data sets. When we look at it, if we look at it at the unit level, we do get these women-headed households. We do get some of these. Even the census gives us some of that data, but explicitly, women farmers, women cultivators is a category which comes out of general minus male, so women, not really taking into account a larger one. The next thing, sir, your total women respondents is 57 in one and 90 in the other. So 57 only of widows from two villages. What is the status? What is the economic status of the village widows? And what do they have any other kind of support? Financial support would also prove to be very important and interesting. Going back to the land histories of these areas, because women's participation in a village, in any village, even now, is regulated a lot by the social customs, social mores, and the social spaces that exist within those particular villages. How are those social spaces accepting or not accepting all these regulations, or even perhaps the change of uh, agricultural product? Why only paddy? Why not? No mention has been made of any kind of market vegetable growing, which women do on a large scale. From growing vegetables in their own small patches, whatever is left over, if not consumed, is sold at some price to the others. So the additional incomes which comes in through all such things, the different kind of networks which exist is somewhere I think needs to be brought out. Your study, sir, is excellent. I will reiterate, and the empowerment index I found very interesting, but the what I would also like to bring out here is that These are shifting realities we are talking of. They are definitely realities, but they are shifting. The nebulousness of the spaces that they occupy and how the movement, the flow, how is it occurring, the interaction points. I think those are also there in your questionnaires. I think that could be brought out a lot more because these spaces which are negotiated are actually constructed not just by the social relations but also the local politics and public and political spaces. And the ongoing political churning in any village is a constant idea. So these conceptual understandings also need to be brought into your framework somewhere. There is also a lot of decentralization in the villages these days, especially in West Bengal, where panchayat elections have just happened. Many people could not perhaps sell their products on time. There were a lot of different kinds of things which were happening on the ground. I found most interesting is that pre-pandemic and post-pandemic aggregations, as you have showcased, post-pandemic people have still not caught up to the pre-pandemic levels, which is also a true reality. But simultaneously, things have shifted on the ground. Will they be able to catch up to that level? Is also a question that needs to be considered here because when we present a scenario called pre and post, and you are using probability prediction models in your understandings, so these things would be much, I mean, it's already a very rich study, but I think these are things which could enrich your study further. The other thing that I would like to bring in, perhaps not just as a researcher or a social scientist, but more perhaps as a social scientist, a little bit of anecdotal evidence from your field. That would also add to the richness of your data set. You must have had qualitative interviews which because your data set which you have shown that how are decisions taken. It is not a simple question that you have asked that who takes the decisions. These are a series of questions which are asked and the one with the highest weight is then assigned. So those things would, I think, enrich your study more. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I enjoyed reading the paper, and I would, once it is published, I would definitely like to use something of this in my own work. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Professor Parmod, would you like to react to some of it, or should we take questions? What would you prefer?
As you wish, if you want, I have noted down. If you want to take the other questions also, then probably given the time also,
Yeah.
it would be
So there are a couple of
economizing.
questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
Would you like to have a look at them? In the meantime, we would invite questions from the audience. You could put it in the chat box or raise your hand, and I can request you to come and speak, but be brief if you want to speak. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Matthew Kurian?
I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
I will be very brief. Following the response of Professor Gupta, I want to raise three questions, maybe supporting her intervention. One is you referred to the whole question of migration. I think it has two sides. One, the male labor is coming to other parts of India, especially to Kerala, I know. And therefore that gives additional responsibilities to women. They are forced to take decisions. That is one aspect of it. The most important aspect is that they are earning income, higher incomes, especially in Kerala, I know. Higher income. That will be remitted to their family. So the family income goes up. When the family income goes up, children education, health, all these human capital could be formed. That means, therefore, that is a sign of gender development also. But in your presentation, I missed that. So that is one of my observations. The second, again, she referred it to the institutions. Again, I am joining this program from Kerala. we have a variety of institutions empowering women. I am surprised. You did not mention any one of such institutions. So that is my second. Third, she also referred to decentralization. State. Now we have 3 tiers of governments at the center, state, and local. But in your presentation, I did not find any mention of local governments. In Kerala, for example, we have the decentralized people's planning, and we have gender as a special component. So when I listen to you, especially from being sitting in Kerala, I am so surprised. Is this the All India cross section? Thank you very much. I am stopping at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Kurian. Any other question? Anybody wants to raise a hand? Otherwise, we will go through the questions which are there in the chat box.
Hmm.
So I leave it to you, Professor Parmod. You have the comments from the discussant. You have questions in the chat box, and you have Dr. Kurian who has raised a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I'll just start with Professor Bashabi. I think I shared with her the larger work and
So,
to
sir, my name is pronounced as Bashabi.
Bashabi. Yeah, sorry.
Sir.
Yeah. Bashabi ji, you've provided a very wide spectrum of your knowledge of the subject and also the knowledge of the local place where the survey is done. I'm happy that somebody is sitting there who is very well aware about the history and geography of the place and how my study is in what context. Yeah. So you have, I think, a lot of your this thing was in the suggestions, but there are few questions. I just what I could note down: women or girls who inherited land. I am talking about the widows who are operating in agriculture. Basically, this study, I once again make it clear that the purpose of the study was to just see. I've seen enough literature available where it talks about women's role in agriculture. Most of it, 70-80%, is her role as a agriculture laborer, and whatever the rest of the literature on women's role in the cultivation, again the role is basically a few activities they do in agriculture, mostly helping the husband, mostly helping the family members, or as a hired labor in the agriculture. But there is a lack of literature, almost literature is absent, where women as a agriculture cultivator, as a decision maker of agri related activities, that kind of literature is not available. I could not get many of the papers, only 2-3 papers. They are all cited in the work, where women playing a role in agriculture, how different and how much is their contribution to agriculture vis-a-vis the male agriculture. And in that context only, I am talking of control group. I am trying to see the production function of male and production function of female, how the female production function is different from male production function. That is where getting the statistics of women agriculture cultivators, the the CSO, our agriculture census also provides almost 30% women are there as cultivators. but are they working as a cultivator in the sense that they make a decision about what is what would be the cropping pattern? I have got 2 acres of land. What particular crop I am going to grow? What kind of machinery I need to purchase? How much fertilizer I will be applying? I will be applying DAP before sowing, and urea, how much quantity of phosphorus, how much quantity of potash is needed, which insecticide, which pesticide is required for this particular crop. This kind of decision where we just see the input used by farmers, they are decided by the male farmers because they are the male headed household, they are the male run agriculture. What about the female? Do we have enough examples where female is taking decisions? This is what I wanted to, and it is very, very difficult to get a statistics where women are really playing the role of agriculturalist, where they are taking the decision where to sell their produce, which particular market gives them better price, which machinery is to be, if I want to buy a tractor or a harrow or a cultivator, which company of cultivator I should buy. So we are looking for that kind of cultivator, women cultivators, and then compare it with male cultivators and see whether there is any difference, whether there is a policy bias from the government, what kind of lacking they are facing, what kind of lacunas are there, what kind of policy related instruments are not available to the women, which are available easily to the men, and what kind of government help is required to make provision of such factors. So this is the question which we are addressing in this study. And that is where searching for such cultivators, you just go talk to the panchayat, talk to the Department of Agriculture in any state. You won't get any help from any counter. It's very difficult to get the real cultivators on the ground, survey them, take a adjoining control group, and then compare their production function. This is what we have done in this study. And I am aware women, lot of now we have inheritance coming really on the ground, and the inheritance law is being followed by many parents. They give land to male son as well as to the daughter, equal share or whatever way. So the girls are inheriting land, but are they cultivating in the rural areas the way the son is cultivating? Son has inheritance, and it goes like he is the real farmer after the father. Along with father, son is is cultivating the land, and after the father, son is the real farmer who will continue doing agriculture. Are the daughters having the similar way picked up the agriculture? Are they cultivating? If you just see that the land is in the name of women, but the moment, even if they are doing agriculture, either husband is taking a decision, or father-in-law is taking a decision, or son is taking a decision. So I am just comparing, I am in search of women farmers who are really doing agriculture, taking those decisions. And this is where I end up with these widows who are basically the de jure farmers who are making all the decisions. And then what kind of difficulties they're facing, we have flagged out some of those. Like they don't have access to credit very easily. Most of the cases, they are the ones who are selling their produce to the agent who is available in the village, and agent is discriminating them. He is giving much higher price to the male and much less price to the female, knowing that she has no other option but she has to come to me. So these are the issues which are highlighted in this paper. It's not that you can, in one paper, you can address institutional factors, you can address the quality of land, you can address so many issues. We are, what I presented is the male versus female, where female is really a decision maker. A female is taking the decision herself, running agriculture without any help, compared to the female who is running agriculture but with the help of husband or father-in-law or son-in-law. Somebody is there in the family who is helping her. How much difference it is making in their productivity, in their input use. This is what I have presented in the production function. What are the inputs? You can see the de facto, de jure, and control group. How which input has higher value, which input has lower value, which factor is coming significant. It is explained in much detail in the report, but here in the presentation, I could flag only some of those issues given the time shortage. MSP issue, madam, you have raised women who hold land and those who do not hold land. I have written there in the paper also. I flagged this issue of minimum support price. They are not getting the minimum support price compared to the male who are much more linked with the government. Even the government agency which is procuring on behalf of the FCI, they have the linkage, whereas these women, they are dependent on the agent available in the village. The agent, the same agent will be buying rice from her at a cheaper rate and selling at minimum support price at the government source. Social sphere and power dynamic. Of course, we have tried to flag those issues in the index of women empowerment. All those social factors we have taken into account. How much she has, she raises question in the meetings, in the committees, the issues of demo, the factors related to social and other milieu are there in the framing of agriculture index. Capacity building measures, women-headed households, gender, male. Somewhere, I think you raised the issue of control. In what sense we are using this control group? Basically, it's not a. We have not done a kind of exercise where we are providing the treatment and control, and we are running an experiment where the meaning the word control group is totally different. But this is a one-time survey. Control is in the sense that female-headed household vis-a-vis the male-headed household. In the same kind of circumstances, we have picked up the sample in the same village, adjoining areas where most of the conditions are similar among women and men, so that to compare, to have the comparability of the results of women versus men. Vegetables grown, I have just indicated in the study area, they were growing mainly paddy, autumn paddy, summer paddy, and winter paddy. The households we have surveyed, these 206 households, they were not growing vegetables. Only potato was grown by the male farmers, not by female farmers. The potato comparison is there in the report. I have not presented here, but there is. I am aware that women who are cultivators would be there in the vegetables and in other cropping patterns also. But in this particular village, this particular sample, whatever crops are grown, the actual position I am showing, I am not showing what are the possibilities. Matthew Kurianji, migration, family income increases, of course. The people, the male farmers who migrate in search of job, and mostly they are working in Bangalore, they are working in Kerala. Many of them now they are moving away and from Bihar, Bengal, and many of them they are into agriculture in other states. But because profitability is much better in other states, so they go there and they work as non-farm or farm activities that improve their family income. But how much is the improvement in the production function of the de facto females? That is what is the subject of my theme of this paper. Their income is much better off. But when I say the women empowerment, I have shown the women empowerment index is 0.34 for the control group farmers, where they are much better economically. But how much independence has been given to the women in decision making? How much the women is her view is taken care of? In the case of control group, they are merely as agricultural laborers. They are just going in the field, working the day, coming back. If they are working in the family, they don't get any income. If they work as a agricultural laborer, then they get certain income. But in the decision making within the household related to agriculture, their role is almost negligible. So that is what the index is low. In the case of de facto, they are better off, but de jure is the one who is controlling the decision making. And the other two groups, they are much inferior in the sense of agriculture empowerment. Here, I am not talking women empowerment, I am talking women agriculture empowerment. And they are much lower compared to de jure female farmers. It is irrespective of their economic well-being. Institutional role, I already said. Institutional role, we have seen in agriculture, institution play a role in terms of providing credit, in terms of minimum support price, in terms of providing subsidy. So this particular village, the women who are working as vis-a-vis men, I really don't have the data of how much the subsidy portion they are getting, but we have taken the fertilizer, how much fertilizer they are using compared to men, at what price they are selling compared to men, whether there is any support provided by the government to male versus female. So that is what the picture we are providing here. The paper is referring to a particular situation. I'm not writing here what is the institutional role in agriculture. Yeah, same is the local government rule, whatever in terms of marketing and credit and all those we have taken into account. So I think I've tried to answer whatever questions with me now in the chat box.
No, that's
Sir?
okay. I think you have handled
If
most
Charan
of the
Singh, if
questions.
you have summary of the
Sir,
chat
may I-
box, that
Sir, may
will be
I
helpful.
ask one question?
Who's this, please?
Sir, I am Professor Satyabhan Yadav from Alwar, Rajasthan.
Okay, just give me 1 minute.
Just one.
Professor Parmod,
Yes.
would you have a few more minutes, or I know we are 40 minutes above our time,
I think
and I know
it
you
was
run the
5:30, it's okay.
institution.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
It's
It's okay.
So,
I'll be happy.
Professor Yadav, you
Yes,
please
sir.
go ahead, ask your question.
Yes, sir. Sir, good evening, sir.
Uh-huh.
Sir,
Good evening.
thanks, Professor Pramod Kumar, for a very thoughtful lecture. I heard the full lecture, but I want to add something that I did a study in Alwar district, covering 5 blocks of Alwar district in scheduled caste, scheduled tribe dominated district. And I found in the study that involvement of farm women in decision making process in agriculture was very low. It is because the majority of farm women are illiterate have little knowledge about the latest techniques of farming, face dominance by the male, and other factors are there. So, Professor Pramod Kumar, do you think that there is any relation between the size of land holding and decision making process in which women are playing their role? So, is there any relation between land holding size and the decision making by women farm? And second one thing, how their role can be enhanced in the coming days when land size is getting reduced day by day. So please, I want to know these two questions, sir. Thank you,
Professor Yada, I just want to intervene.
sir.
Would you be available to do a presentation at EGROW full length?
Yes, sir. I can, sir.
Okay. Is your study published somewhere or you've just completed it?
So just completed, and I have sent. I have presented my paper in an international seminar at Jodhpur.
Okay. So what I'll do after this session,
Sir,
if Professor Pramod will agree, I
right,
will invite you to make a presentation
right, sir.
and Professor Parmod can chair, and we'll request Bashpi, Professor Bashabi also to be there.
Sir,
Right? Because this is a very interesting findings that Professor Pramod has shared with us. He
sure,
has just completed his studies, not yet published. He's just completed it
sir,
and very fresh from the oven, and we requested him to make a presentation here. But
sir.
if you have a similar study from Alwar in Rajasthan,
Yes, sir.
we would also like to bring it and discuss that.
Thank you, sir.
So very soon I'll come back to you, and the
Right,
first possible slot that becomes available to us,
right,
we
sir.
will slot you in for a full detailed presentation
Sir,
as Professor Pramod has done.
right, sir.
So we'll keep the suspense to the question until then.
Sir, it would be my pleasure. Thank you.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, Professor Pramod, there are
Yeah,
some very good questions in the chat box,
yeah,
if you want to react. But
yeah.
I must tell you that your rigorous work and that you have presented in such a short time is marvelous. It's something really very, very important. And the study and the conclusion that you've done is extremely, extremely useful for policymakers. So I want to thank you for choosing to share this solid research with us. There have been some questions in the chat box if you want to. You could take a minute or two. Otherwise, I'm very, very
Sure.
satisfied with the discussion, both the discussants' questions, participants' questions, and your presentation, of course, solid gold. So I'll leave it to you if you want to respond to some of the chat box questions.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, Professor Charan Singh ji, thank you very much, and I would be happy to chair the session on Alwar, and would be very happy to see the findings of Yadav ji on Alwar related to scheduled tribe. As in my case, mostly it's SC women and backward women versus men. So I am sure there will be some new findings there. Regarding his question, size of land and role of women. Basically, see, Yadavji, the in our country, our agriculture, most of the rural society is patriarchal in nature, and their thinking is still in the traditional mode. It's very difficult there to accept women as a farmer, and when you say the size of land is low, what I have shown is only 1.2 hectare as the average land. Of course, land size increase in land size have no relationship with women empowerment. We have 20 hectare or 50 hectare or 100 hectare farmer. It never implies that the women will be given much bigger role. Even I think relation is opposite. If the small farmer women will have much more role, because the family economically depends on women's role in the small farming compared to large holding where uh, the agriculture is more dependent on a agriculture hired laborer, and women plays a very big role there as a agricultural laborer, but not as a cultivator, not as a decision maker. What I am referring to is the decision making power with the women that is that has no relation with the holding size. Holding size, increasing holding size does not employ automatical decision making going into women's hand. I think that is a much bigger question, and our society has to change. There is need for a change in our thinking. Role of education is much important there. The urban society has completely changed, but rural society changing into that mode will take much more time, and it may not happen automatically. There has to be much more efforts put into that direction. Social reforms have to take place. If we want to see really the women playing the big role as a large land holder in the village society and playing an important role in the decision making in agriculture in the rural place. So I hope that answers your larger question. Looking at the chat box, there is Dr. DK Ramesh Kumar. To everyone, when we talk into women in farming, land owned women have at least economical security because of land, but landless farming women is still living without minimum subsistence wage. The best example is in your study, the wage rate increased to rupees 10 only for 3 years. Of course, I have the 100 laborers, which I have not much emphasized in this paper because time is shortage and you cannot have my more emphasis was on cultivators. We have the women empowerment index for laborer also, and they are much lower. They are at the bottom, and there has to be women related to agriculture laborer. Probably there is much more to be done for empowering these labor class in agriculture. Any data on the financial support from the respective governments? I don't know what is the context of this. Informative presentation as I did one of the study in Alwar. I think this is what you are referring to. We have already discussed. Wonderful presentation. Thanks for your nice presence, sir. You gave some insights on women economical empowerment in farming. I don't think there is any question. Any provision regarding the landless women which have still face some insecurity in other farm and lands and other activities? Is there any relation to landless women and land-owned women? What is the relation between two of them? The answer is there. I have the index which talks of the DGO women empowerment is much better than the de facto, and then the women in the control group, and then the least is the women labor. But I think if women gets hold of agriculture, probably that would also provide some help to women laborer in agriculture, because women would be always in their thinking much more pro women compared to male agriculture, where male is their mentality is totally in a different front. So probably even if they don't get women laborers don't get land right, but if they are working for women cultivator, their condition could be much better than the working for male agriculture. In plant breeding progress, research data shown female labor doing good in variety development than male labor, but still wage is lesser than male labor. How does the society organization is thinking to increase wage for female labor to some extent specific job? I think the situation is same whether they are working, if they are working as a laborer, if they are working as a skilled agriculturalist, then their wage rate, it's not wage, then the salary is much better. But then that is a totally a different ball game altogether, because they are working as a skilled manpower, not as a unskilled agriculture laborer. So probably that is what I said. Education has to play a big role there. How much the women are participated in SHG group and livelihood mission program? Is it included in the indexation? I think this is not. We have a small sample, and in that village, probably 1 or 2 SHG were there where they are participating, but largely it is very difficult to reflect on the women participation in SHGs. I think there's no more question here. I thank
Professor,
thank you very much.
sorry to interrupt. For some part of my discussion, I lost the connectivity. I just would like to ask 2 questions, one from each of the panelists. First, from Professor Parmod Kumar. Professor Parmod Kumar, let me say, because I heard you full, but could not hear what Professor Gupta was saying. But let me ask very simple question, Parmod Kumarji. You worked out the sample on the basis of 209 households, of course, different components. And what was your sampling list you drew from the State Economic Statistics Directorate? That is one. And what sampling methodology you adopted? And second, when you worked out the return from Kharif, Rabi, and different crops, you said per hectare, of course. But did you standardize with reference to the duration of the crop? That is one. And my question to Bashabi is, what is the impact of the various land reform policy on the farmers?
Okay. The question basically, there was not enough time to go into the details. See, the district was selected based on the women participation in agriculture from the agriculture census statistics, which is available, I think 2015-16. So once we have had the Kuch Bihar district, we approached the state government agriculture department, and we selected the block based on the statistics which provided highest number of women cultivators there. And once the block was selected, we just contacted the village panchayat, and village panchayat only provided us the details of the women who are basically de jure and de facto, where husband have gone abroad, and where husband has died, and the widows are doing agriculture. So we took the entire list from the panchayat, and in fact this was confirmed with the households, and then the household selection was done, and then survey was done. As I said, all the 59 de jure women who were working as sole cultivators, they were selected. Similarly, de facto, whatever was available, we had taken, and then the control group was basically taking the list of farmers. Random sampling was device to select the sample. Regarding the duration of crop, of course, this is the data for the 21-22 and 2019-20. 19-20 was based on their memory. We have just collected few statistics, not everything. But 21-22 agriculture year, which goes up to my colleague was there in the 22 in the field. So 21-22 up to July 22, we had collected the information of the crops grown by the household during the entire year, the reference year. And there were 3 crops: autumn, winter and summer paddy. These are the crops grown by these women, and potato was grown as an additional crop by male farmers. So the activities were collected, and what I presented, the productivity, that is of course seasonal, because it's a kharif paddy productivity and rabi paddy productivity separately. You can sum that, and you get the total productivity for the year, what we call yield and productivity. We got 2 season yield, and then the in value terms one can just make a per annum per acre productivity. This is what we have done. Thank you.
No, my question, Professor Parmod Kumar, my question was with reference to the return. You worked out a per hectare, but you did not standardize with reference to per month, because the duration of crop varies a great deal from one season to another. That is my question.
Ashokji, it is not per month, it is per crop during the kharif crop, because in agriculture you don't get income per month, you get output for the kharif paddy. Then the price of the kharif paddy, you get the total returns,
that
and
I
then
understand.
the cost.
Now I understood your point, but if you work out the per hectare return, when you work out the return per hectare, because suppose the duration of certain crops is 3 months, some are 5 months, and you work out per crop or per season, that will not reflect the reality, because basically we have to see, unless we standardize the denominator with reference to the time duration. But anyway, you have worked out per hectare. That's fine. But we need to look from further from per month, because we have to standardize the duration.
No, Ashokji, basically this is the total output, 24 quintal multiplied by the price. You get the revenue minus the total cost incurred, including the imputed cost of family labor. What you get is the net return for that crop. And you have net return of kharif paddy and rabi paddy. Sum together is the total net return of the year. Then you sum it up and divide by 12, you get monthly income.
Yeah, I have understood. So thanks for the clarification. Can we talk to Professor Gupta?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Regarding your question, what is the impact of land reforms on women agriculturists in general? The first land reform that we had in India was a Congress Agrarian Reform Committee headed by J.C. Kamarappa in 1948, which resulted in the abolition of the Zamindari Act in 1950. And from there on, we have had multiple commissions, even forest laws, agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, agriculture extension land extension laws have brought this question. One of the first, if we look at the Buddha movement or even the land sealing movements that have gone on through different governments across India, we see one very interesting fact, that it is women who have lost their portion of the land. The land that was surrendered was actually in the name of the women. So men retained their ownership of larger tracts of land. Even now, one of my questions to Professor Kumar was also on the land fractions that were there in the field. So how and where the impact is felt is different depending upon the social spaces. West Bengal till date, even now, has a more of an enabling situation for all women agriculturists as compared to other parts of India. My own work has primarily been in relation to, in this situation of land inheritance and land productivity, has been in Western Haryana and Western Uttar Pradesh, Haryana and Punjab. There we found that, speaking from my field experiences from there and whatever we could find out, that women do not have any control over land as such, very little. Control over land becomes enmeshed with social relations. So it is something like, if you give up your land ownership which you have inherited through law or you want to inherit, even in the villages, then you will also have to give up your natal family relations. So the social support which the woman expects in times of stress or even in her matrimonial family is the bargaining factor there. There is always a negotiation. Yeah, but one change I will mention I have seen in Western Uttar Pradesh, especially in the districts of Bareilly, Aligarh, and not so much Bagpat, but in Bareilly and Aligarh, which are also a little bit away from the typical, very male patriarchal reigning regions, we see that women want to own land because they see it as a factor in which they will be much more productive. It will add to their livelihoods. So sustainable livelihoods, which are far better, if I may say qualified in West Bengal, would be very much enabling to the woman there. Yes, the village dynamics would definitely work, in which she would have to pay a higher price, the discriminations that go on for the woman in the village, because ultimately the aim is to own more land. So if the woman is more in a discriminated and more in disadvantaged position, there will be a distressed sale of that agricultural land. So village dynamics usually try and force women to either give up the land through all such matters, or to create, there is another part of gender violence which comes in land relations here, especially women in agriculture. As I said, I've also worked amongst tribal communities. My entire work, my PhD was on Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, in which we saw that women were created as bitches. So a different kind of violence, a different kind of social scenario emerges in such situations. Women agriculturists per se, there are multiples of them. The difference between what I would also contest here is the women-headed households and women agriculturists who are heading their own families. I think what Professor Kumar has done is taken as widows, they are both. They are the head of the households, they're also the decision makers, and also that they have the ability to control that piece of land. So land reforms and women are a very contested terrain, if I may say so. Every social space has its own peculiarities. And one thing which I would have liked to see also in Professor Kumar's work was the difference between women-headed households of the Hindu and the Muslim religions. Because one thing I find very interesting in all such discussions, even in my own fieldwork, is that ultimately, if land has to be given to the woman, they say a very simple statement, ये तो हमारे गांव का नियम है जी, हम तो नहीं देते. So, but Bengal, Assam, parts of Orissa, parts of Jharkhand are also places which have had women rights in land, and women have exercised those rights. That's what I was asking, sir. That, sir, did you find, my question was primarily said that sale of land which women have inherited or which women would control, they would come from different districts and control the cropping also. I have had examples of those women also, very few definitely, but there are such women who do not give up control, who maintain that land because it is related to their livelihoods. This is the bulwark of their dependency on land. And land is still very important in all cases, whether we call it rural land, whether we call it urban land. This is just a off the cuff thought here, that there are no land records of who owns the corporate lands in urban situations. Who owns these huge big buildings on which who and paying the revenue is not, revenue register does not disclose the identity so much. Whereas if you open a khatian in any village, you will get to know the lineage, you will get to know the ownership. So that is the difference.
Thank you, all of you. Means this is a fabulous discussion. Scheduled for 1 hour, it's gone to 2 hours, and I still don't feel like stopping. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to invite Professor Yadav. Professor Yadav, you please contact us. I don't have your number. If you can please take down my number and reach out to me. The first available slot that we have is December 1.
Sure.
All the slots are booked until then. So
Sure.
I will invite you to please present your research on December 1. And Professor Gupta, the question which Professor Vishandass asked you and your response is also very interesting. if you are comfortable, we would like to invite you for the webinar on December 8th. That's the second slot available. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to request three of you, Professor Parmod, Professor Yadav, and Professor Gupta, to be with me in some shape or the other. So Professor Parmod could chair the session by Professor Yadav and Professor Gupta, and Professor Gupta could be a discussant to the paper which Professor Yadav will be presenting. So I'll be in touch with three of you, and on the board of EGROW, Dr. Vishandass is the agriculture expert. So I'll request him to either chair the session, or if he's available, all four of you together, we'll take this forward. So this is extremely interesting, what is emerging from the discussion.
Thank you.
So if I have your permission, Professor Yadav, share your number with me. Sure. So
Thank
let me now formally close the session.
Sure.
Dr. Vishandass was chairing, but unfortunately his connection was very bad. Dr. Vishandass, are you back?
Yes. Yeah,
Huh?
I can speak. So I really enjoyed. Parmod Kumar has very rich analysis, deep, and it was focused, de jure, de facto, and the control group. And basically, he also did something like a randomized trial kind of thing, which Abhijit Banerjee did. So in some sense, yes, I can see the connect between what Abhijit Banerjee has done on randomized controlled trial RCT and on, because basically what he did was a control group of the men-led farm, and then he has done extensive research across the seasons, across the crops, in of course in the Kuch Bihar. That was a pioneering work he has done, and I really liked listening to him. I missed a lot about what Professor Gupta said, but towards the end I could connect. I don't know why it happened, my connectivity, but I could hear Professor Bashabi's, Gupta's intervention and point of view towards the end, very, but nevertheless, this also was very enriching. And I would be particularly interested because agriculture, the land, is one of the important factor of production. Land, capital, and labor, and then of course entrepreneurship. But all these factors of production, land assumes a lot of importance. A lot of water has gone, especially starting from West Bengal, where Professor Parmod Kumar had done his research on the land reforms. Because West Bengal had been the pioneer in land reforms, but few other countries, there was so much rich history. And as Professor Charan Singh said, on the 1st December or 8th December, they will come out, and I'm sure many people will be interested, including myself, Professor Charan Singh. So it was a very enriching discussion, and from on behalf, I really extend my sincere thanks to both the speakers, Professor Parmod Kumar, Professor uh, Bashabi, Gupta ji, and then of course our CEO, Professor Charan Singh. Perhaps Charan Singh will make certain announcement for the forthcoming, and how because some of the participants were asking so much, sir, will we get the recording or some type of today's discussion? So Professor Charan Singh, I'm sure he will make some announcement. Over to Professor Charan.
So yes, the important announcements, and I must thank Professor Vishandass, Professor Pramod, Professor Bashabi, and Professor Yadav. Excellent research, rigorous. Thank you so much, Professor Pramod. And very
Charanjit,
good.
Charanjit, I would like to tell Professor Vishandass that we are carrying out RCT in Karnataka and Punjab. Two other studies we are we have done already RCT, and we are working on the results now.
When are
We'll
you
discuss
ready
sometime
with
later.
those? When would you be ready with those studies?
So we can discuss later.
Okay. No, because December we could dedicate to agriculture and women empowerment. That's
Yeah,
the
we
first
can.
possible slot available December. Until November end, we are totally gone. But we could make December, we could discuss all this research in December. So I'll wait for your study to get completed.
Sure.
The recording of today's presentation will be available on our website tomorrow. I'm sure many of us would like to listen again in depth. The presentation was so rigorous, so we may like to look at the tables and focus on the tables. Next week, we have a study. We have Professor Nirmala from Cochin, who will be talking about women empowerment, and she's going to join us with a panel. So I would invite you same time 4 to 5. I also want to make one very important announcement. We at EGROW find that economic literacy vis-a-vis financial literacy needs to be strengthened in our country. And the very purpose of this policy-oriented think tank that we have, EGROW Foundation, is dissemination of knowledge across the country and raising the level of economics or economics learning at every nook and corner of our country. So we have come out with introductory programs, 6-hour modules on the Indian economy, conceptual as well as theoretical and empirical. So we just completed one and we found that was very useful. Whosoever attended it found it very, very interesting. We are starting the next one on August 21, which is Monday. Every evening, 1 hour, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. We are talking about national income and macro monetary policy, fiscal policy, the financial system. We are talking about all these important issues, unemployment, story of growth. So I would invite you and I would request you to please share this information wherever you are, in whichever part of the country you are. We would like people to join, people who are doing their masters in economics, people who have done other subjects but want to understand what economics are, basic concepts, introductory fundamental concepts. What is a monetary policy? What's a fiscal policy? How does it really operate? And what is the financial system? What is the story of unemployment or growth? Or how does national income get computed? All those issues we are discussing. 6 lectures starting from Monday, August 21. So would request each one of you to look at our website. The flyers are right there. Look at the website and please popularize. With this, let me once again thank the speaker, Dr. Parmod, the discussant, Professor Bashabi Gupta, and Dr. Vishandass to chair this session. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sir.